One wrong step, and a seemingly solid snow bridge crumbles to dust, swallowing a man in an instant. In that single second, Nanga Parbat, the infamous mountain with a reputation as one of the deadliest on Earth, claimed the life of the legendary Karl Unterkircher, leaving his partners with a monstrous choice in the death zone. They had to decide, stay and die trying to recover their friend's body, or make a desperate push upward toward the summit for a ghost of a chance at survival. How did an ambitious dream expedition turn into a 9-day hell on one of the most dangerous mountain faces on the planet? It all began long before that fateful day. The roar of an engine and the sharp smell of gasoline fill a garage as a young man leans over the hood of a car. This is Karl, just a regular car mechanic from South Tyrol, his hands accustomed to the feel of metal and oil. But the moment he steps out of the workshop and looks up, his world changes. Towering over the cozy rooftops are the giant peaks of the Dolomites. They watch him, and he watches them, and this silent dialogue drowns out the noise of any engine. Karl Unterkircher grows up in the picturesque Val Gardena Valley. As a kid, he's kicking a soccer ball and racing down slopes on skis, just like all the other local boys. But at 15, something happens that turns his world upside down. For the first time, he touches a sheer rock face, not as a game, but as a climb. The cold stone beneath his fingers, the breathtaking height, and a feeling of absolute freedom. In that moment, soccer and skiing fade into the background. Karl realizes he's found his true calling. Passion quickly turns into mastery. The army drafts the young man, but even there, he finds himself in his element. Karl lands a spot in an elite parachute unit where he teaches other soldiers mountain survival. He becomes an instructor, honing his discipline and endurance to the absolute limit. The mountains don't forgive mistakes, and Karl learns this lesson for life. By 1997, he turns his hobby into a world-class profession. Unterkircher passes the grueling exams and earns his certification as an international mountain guide. Now, he's officially responsible for other people's lives on vertical walls. Back in the valley, his authority is unquestionable. Karl leads the legendary K2 Club and becomes the president of the Aiud Alpine Dolomites Rescue Service. When disaster strikes in the mountains, he's the one leading the charge, pulling people from the most dangerous traps. In his home of Val Gardena, his life looks like a perfect picture: a respected guide, a reliable rescuer, a loving husband to his beautiful wife, Silke. He's calm, level-headed, and humble. But behind this mask of sensibility lies an insatiable thirst for the unknown. He's explored the Dolomites inside and out. Every ledge is familiar, every route conquered. But somewhere far away, thousands of kilometers from home, giants pierce the sky, their summits reaching into the death zone. And Karl feels that the real game is just beginning. Picture a map of the Dolomites. Now, in your mind, draw 30 new lines on it. 30 routes where before, there was only intimidating emptiness. In the 1990s, while most climbers are lining up for the famous peaks, Karl turns these mountains into his personal laboratory. He seeks out paths others consider impossible and finds solutions where they see only smooth, vertical rock. Unterkircher chooses the most honest, uncompromising path. He becomes a fanatic for clean style. Karl refuses to drill into the rock and place bolts every few feet to pull himself up. But the Dolomites are mostly rock, and big mountain alpinism demands mastery of ice. So, Karl leaves his cozy home valley to challenge the legendary faces of the Western Alps. He stands at the foot of the north faces of Mont Blanc, the Weisshorn, and Gran Paradiso. Here, an eternal cold reigns, and the sun is a rare visitor. Conditions change in a flash. What seemed like solid snow in the morning can become an icy trap by the afternoon. It's here, on the classic walls of Europe, that Karl learns to feel the mountain with his skin, to anticipate rockfalls and avalanches seconds before they happen. He rarely climbs alone. His partners are tough guys just like him, from his own region, countrymen who speak his language in every sense of the word. Tied together on a vertical wall, trust is more important than any piece of gear. When you're hanging over a kilometer-deep abyss, you have to know the person on the other end of the rope won't flinch. They work as a single organism without needing commands, understanding each other just by the tension in the line. This team chemistry and his knack for picking the right people would become his greatest asset. And just when you'd think there's enough adrenaline to go around, Karl brings out his skis. But he's not looking for groomed runs with comfortable ski lifts. He's drawn to the wild, extreme couloirs, narrow ice chutes wedged between cliffs, where the steepness makes your heart pound in your throat. He descends from the summits of Viesmese and Monte Cristallo on routes where a single mistake means a fall into the void. One wrong move with the edge of a ski, and there's no chance to recover. This experience teaches him lightning-fast reflexes and absolute control over his body. The years spent in the Alps forge his character. He builds a colossal arsenal of technical skills and, even more importantly, phenomenal mental resilience. He learns to endure the cold, the burning in his muscles, and complete uncertainty. The Alps become his harsh university of survival, and by the mid-2000s, Karl passes his final exam. Now, the foundation is laid, and he's ready for the heights where the air thins, and the stakes are raised to the absolute limit. Imagine running a marathon, but you can only breathe through a thin cocktail straw. That's what every step feels like in the death zone, where the air is so thin, the human body slowly begins to shut down. In 2004, Karl Unterkircher steps onto the world stage, and he doesn't just knock on the door of the elite, he kicks it clean off its hinges. It all starts with an invitation he can't refuse. A wave of patriotism is sweeping through Italy. The country is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the first ascent of K2, the legendary Savage Mountain. A massive national expedition is assembled, and Karl finds himself on this ambitious team. But their plan is monumental, bordering on insane. First, a warm-up on the roof of the world, and then, the main objective in Pakistan. That spring, Karl finds himself at the foot of Mount Everest. He's surrounded by hundreds of commercial tourists, loaded with oxygen tanks like astronauts on a spacewalk. They follow a well-trodden path, relying entirely on Sherpas and bottled gas. Unterkircher chooses a fundamentally different path. He ascends the classic ridge but refuses an oxygen mask. His lungs burn like fire. Every movement demands colossal willpower. But he stands at 8,848 meters, breathing the ice-cold, crystal-clear, and murderously thin air. For most professionals, Everest is the peak of an entire career, something that takes a year to recover from. For Karl, it's just the start of the marathon. He doesn't fly home to relax on the couch. He immediately travels to Pakistan, to the base of the formidable pyramid of K2. This mountain is steeper, more technical, and far more dangerous than Everest. There are no lines of tourists here, and any mistake is punished instantly. His body still remembers the Himalayan cold, yet Karl is already storming the second 8,000er. Just 63 days have passed since his triumph on Everest. Karl is standing on the summit of K2, and again, without supplemental oxygen. The mountaineering world is left speechless. The statistics confirm the unbelievable. Unterkircher becomes the first person in history to complete this oxygen-free double of the world's two highest peaks in a single season. This achievement is so unique, it's immediately entered into the Guinness Book of World Records. Back home, he's welcomed as a national hero. The president awards him the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, and the press celebrates him. You'd think this would be the time to rest on his laurels, guide wealthy clients up Everest, and sign autographs. But Karl sees it differently. Fame doesn't blind him. He openly criticizes the commercialization of the mountains, where success is bought with money, not earned with sweat and skill. This fantastic success in 2004 becomes, for him, just proof that his body can withstand extreme punishment. Now he knows he's ready for the real challenges, the places where there are no fixed ropes, no footprints from other people. The silence of the unknown terrifies most people, but for Karl, it sounds louder than the roar of any stadium crowd. After his resounding success and world records, the entire climbing community expects him to take the predictable next step, the race for the prestigious collection of all 14 8,000ers. It's the standard, well-understood path to fame. Lucrative sponsorship deals, queues on fixed ropes, and deep trenches stomped into the snow that you can almost follow with your eyes closed. But Unterkircher makes a sharp, unexpected turn, stepping off the brightly lit stage and into the shadows. He realizes that following in others' footsteps, even in the stratosphere, becomes mechanical work, a routine. He's no longer interested in height for the sake of a line in the statistics or a checkmark in a logbook. He's drawn to the pure, crystalline challenge of being the first. Karl fundamentally changes his philosophy, transforming from an athlete into an explorer. He decisively rejects the heavy siege tactics, where a mountain is suffocated by kilometers of rope and camps are stuffed to the brim with oxygen bottles. His choice now is small, autonomous groups. It's a kind of mountaineering special forces, minimal gear, maximum speed, and complete, absolute isolation. No hired porters to carry your pack and pitch your tent. Just you, your trusted partners, and the mountain, speaking one-on-one, with no intermediaries. In 2006, this new, dangerous path leads him to China, to the wild and remote Sichuan province. The objective, on paper, looks deceptively low, the peak of Genyan at just 6,204 meters high. After Everest, the numbers might seem trivial, but in the mountains, danger isn't always measured by altitude. This peak is a true phantom. Before Karl, only a single Japanese expedition had been here, way back in 1987, and since then, the mountain had stood unbreachable, like an enchanted fortress, for nearly 20 years. Unterkircher assembles a team he trusts implicitly, as much as he trusts himself. He's joined by Walter Nones and Simon Kerrer, men ready to share not just the triumph of victory, but the mortal risk. They choose a route that no one before them had even seriously considered, the North Ridge. It was a leap into the complete unknown. They had no detailed descriptions, no maps marking hidden crevasses or avalanche-prone couloirs. They had to forge every vertical meter of the path themselves, reading the complex terrain on the fly, as if deciphering a tangled book in an unknown language. The ascent becomes a brutal test of skill and intuition. There's no guides brought back to hide behind, no radio to call for help. The group moves in pure alpine style, leaving themselves no easy way to retreat. The North Ridge greets them with a harsh mix of icy rock and snow, demanding flawless technique from each of them. When they finally reach the summit, the moment is historic. They've completed only the second ascent in the history of this sacred mountain, but they've done it their own way, on a completely new, unique path. This success proves to Karl, once and for all, that he's right. The true treasures of alpinism are hidden not where tourists flock, but where others are afraid to even look. 20 hours of continuous vertical hell. That's how long it takes to get from the base to the summit when you give up the right to sleep and rest. In the spring of 2007, Karl Unterkircher returns to Nepal, but this time, he's not alone. He's in the company of a living legend. His partner is Hans Kammerlander, the man who was once his mentor, and now stood beside him as an equal. This duo of experience and untamable energy sets its sights on one of the most beautiful and intimidating mysteries of the Himalayas, Jambala Peak. This mountain, standing at 7,350 meters, looks like a perfect pyramid. But Karl isn't just interested in the summit. He's drawn to the south face, a gigantic, almost vertical bastion that had, until now, repelled every attempt. There's no place to set up intermediate camps, no ledges for tents. There's no right to a second chance. Either the wall is climbed in a single push, or it doesn't let you go. The pair opts for a tactic that borders on madness, a non-stop push. They start, knowing that to stop means to freeze. They climb hour after hour, trading leads, digging into hard ice and unreliable rock. Night turns to day, the cold seeps into their bones, but they keep moving like clockwork. On May 22nd, after a grueling 20-hour assault, Unterkircher and Kammerlander reach the highest point. They stand there, certain that their feet are the first to touch this snow. But down below, what awaits them is not just triumph, but a fog of doubt. The world of alpinism is not just a brotherhood. It's also a world of disputes. Soon, information surfaces that a Slovenian team had allegedly already been there in 2004. A quiet war of claims begins. The Slovenians insist the summit is theirs, but their proof is as hazy as the morning mist in the mountains. It becomes a classic gray area in mountaineering. Who was really first? In this situation, many would have launched a loud media campaign, foaming at the mouth to defend their claim. But Karl handles it differently. He refuses to turn the mountains into a courtroom. For him, what matters is the act of climbing the wall, the route itself, which no one disputes. Unterkircher leaves the question to historians and journalists, preferring to trust the facts he saw with his own eyes. He doesn't waste energy on verbal sparring because he knows the mountain doesn't change based on who wrote what about it in the papers. His victory is the wall he climbed, and no one can take that away from him. Most professional athletes need months of recovery after looking death in the eye. Karl Unterkircher doesn't even have time to unpack his backpack. A mere 8 weeks go by after the grueling assault in Nepal, and he's already standing at the foot of the next giant. July of 2007 takes him to the harsh Karakoram. Before him lies Gasherbrum II, an 8,000er that many consider accessible. But Karl is looking at the mountain from a side untouched by commercial tours. He chooses the north face from the Chinese side, a grim, icy bastion that looks like a fortress wall guarding the edge of the heavens. This undertaking feels like a covert operation. Together with Daniele Bernasconi and Michele Compagnoni, Karl enters a zone of absolute isolation. There are no rescue helicopters here, no Sherpas with hot tea. The team opts for a semi-alpine style, minimal gear, maximum mobility, and a total reliance on their own strength. For 3 days, they crawl up a vertical labyrinth of ice and rock, drawing a new line where the map shows only a blank spot. At 8,000 meters, every movement requires the effort of lifting a barbell, but they don't stop. On July 20th, the moment they risked everything for arrives. Unterkircher and Bernasconi reach the summit. But that's only half the job. At that moment, Karl puts a daring plan into action, one that transforms a simple ascent into a historic event. They don't descend the way they came up. They complete a full traverse of the mountain massif. Having climbed from China, the alpinists begin their descent on the Pakistani side. They literally step over the roof of the world, crossing the massif and emerging on the other side of the range. It's a one-way ticket. They have no way back. Any mistake on the descent down an unknown slope would be fatal. When the exhausted but alive pair descends to base camp in Pakistan, the climbing community erupts in applause. To pioneer a new route up a face and complete a traverse of an 8,000er in a single season, that's the absolute pinnacle of mountaineering. Italy showers its hero with awards. Karl receives the prestigious Paolo Consiglio Prize from the Italian Alpine Club, and an award many call the Alpine Oscar. He is now officially recognized as a legend. He's no longer just a talented guy from the Dolomites. He's a member of the global extreme sports elite. Unterkircher is at the very peak of his career. His name is spoken with reverence, and it seems that for this man, gravity operates by a different set of laws. Sometimes, a single ink stamp on a document can change a person's fate faster than a giant avalanche. In 2008, politics intervenes with nature's plans. China closes access to its mountains because of the Olympics, and the permit for an expedition to Gasherbrum II is revoked. Most climbers in this situation would pack their bags and fly home, but Karl isn't used to backing down. He unfolds a map and finds a new target in Pakistan. His finger lands on Nanga Parbat, but he doesn't choose a standard route. He chooses the Rocky Oat Face, a monstrous slope with a 4,000-meter vertical drop, where no one before him had dared to attempt a direct line. The face looks like a frozen ocean storm, lifted vertically into the sky. Karl looks at this icy bastion from base camp, and his usual confidence gives way to deep contemplation. In these days, he entrusts his most private thoughts to paper. Lines appear in his journal that will later become his epitaph. He writes that life exists in the space between birth and the end, calling it a mystery for which no one is given the key. These words don't sound like the bravado of an athlete, but like the humble acceptance of a wise man standing on the threshold of eternity. The tension in the camp is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Unterkircher, always known for his composure, senses something is wrong. The mountain isn't letting them in. It feels unstable, alive, and threatening. He sends an email in which he admits with startling honesty, the best decision right now would be to abandon the project. He writes that this is the surest way to avoid trouble. Karl weighs the risks on the scales of his experience, and the balance wavers. But expedition logic is a stubborn thing. The team is already there, they're acclimatized, the gear is ready. In the same email, Karl argues against himself. But since everything has gone well so far, are we really going to turn back now? It's a classic cognitive trap, the inertia of success. Previous victories create an illusion of control, and the decision is made to go for the climb. They convince themselves that fear is just a healthy reaction, not a warning. Karl closes his laptop, picks up his ice axe, and takes a step toward the wall, believing that luck is still on his side. The heat of the valleys gives way to the icy breath of the glaciers as the trio, Karl Unterkircher, Walter Nones, and Simon Kehrer, enters the arena. They aren't here to sit in tents and get used to the altitude. They act aggressively. For a warm-up, the team chooses the neighboring Nanga Peak at 6,824 meters. For any other climber, this mountain would be the pinnacle of a career, but for them, it's just a training run, a test of the body before the main event. They establish a new route there, and this success acts as a powerful confidence boost. Now, the real objective stands before them: Nanga Parbat. And here, Karl makes a decision that will define the entire course of history. They reject siege tactics, no kilometers of fixed ropes bolted to the rock, which they could safely use to descend in a storm. No intermediate camps stocked with provisions in advance. This is pure alpine style. They take only what they can carry in their packs: food, fuel, sleeping bags, and an insane amount of determination. There is no safe path of retreat. The climbers become like snails, carrying their homes on their backs up a vertical wall, where any equipment failure means there's no going back. The plan is ambitious and brutally demanding. They need to break through the zone of Sirax and reach the 7,000-meter mark. Up there, at a dizzying altitude, their plan is to carve a ledge out of the ice, set up a bivouac, catch their breath, and then make that final, decisive push for the summit. The team moves as a three-person rope party. They're bound by a single rope, a shared fate, and the very rhythm of their breathing. Karl, being the most experienced, often takes the lead, navigating a path through a labyrinth of crevasses. By July 15th, they are deep in the belly of the beast. The altimeter reads 6,400 meters. The air up here is treacherously thin, and every movement feels like running through water. But they're making good time. The terrain is a complex mix of loose snow and hard ice, but for climbers of their caliber, it's manageable. All around them is a gigantic amphitheater of white silence. It feels as if the mountain is asleep. The sun is lighting up the slope, and for now, the weather is giving them a window of opportunity. They feel strong, confident, believing the most dangerous technical part of the route is still ahead, higher up, near the ridge. The trio continues their ascent, methodically driving their tools into the slope, sure of every step on this giant, icy chessboard. The weather shuts down the route in an instant. It's as if someone just flipped a switch, erasing the very possibility of moving forward. On July 15th, the weather on Nanga Parbat turns with terrifying speed. Just an hour ago, the climbers could see their path, but now they're enveloped in a thick shroud. Heavy, sticky snow is falling in a solid wall, blurring the line between sky and earth. Visibility drops to nearly zero. The team is suddenly inside a total whiteout, a world of white milk, where it's easier to get disoriented than in a pitch-black room. The group is approaching the most dangerous section of the face, a zone of giant crevasses and overhanging seracs. It's a true ice maze, where any step could be their last. Massive ice towers, weighing hundreds of tons, creak and groan overhead, ready to collapse at any moment. But the greatest threat lies hidden beneath their feet. Deep fissures in the glacier are camouflaged by the fresh snow. Karl, as the most experienced and confident, is out front. He takes on the hard work of the leader, breaking trail in the deep snow and searching for safe bridges across the abyss. Unterkircher approaches another crevasse. From above, it appears to be securely covered by a snowdrift, a so-called snow bridge. In the poor visibility and state of fatigue, it's impossible to judge the strength of this structure by sight alone. Karl takes a step. Instead of probing the suspicious area with a long pole or his ice axe, he tests its stability with a few kicks of his boot. It's a move he's practiced for years, but this time, it fails him. The snow feels solid, but it's a deceptive illusion. And in that instant, disaster strikes. The snow bridge gives way, disintegrating into powder right beneath his feet. Karl loses his footing in a flash. He doesn't even have time to cry out as gravity yanks him downward. The safety rope connecting him to his partners goes taut, but the jolt is too late and far too violent. There were no intermediate anchor points on this section to absorb the inertia of the fall. The climber's body vanishes into the mountain's icy gut. He plummets 15 meters, the height of a 5-story building, before hitting the bottom or the walls of the narrow fissure with a sickening thud. The rope tightens, vibrating like a guitar string, and then falls still. This is the most terrifying moment for any climber, the silence that follows the crash of a fall. Walter Nones and Simon Kerrer don't waste a single second on panic. Their reflexes fire faster than thought. They instantly drive their ice axes into the slope, creating a dead man's anchor. Right now, they are the only thing keeping the entire rope team from sliding into the void. They practically glue themselves to the ice wall, staring down into the black void that just swallowed their leader. The climbers start to scream. They call out for Karl, hoping to hear anything. A groan, a curse, the rustle of clothing. But the wind on the rocky oat face snatches their voices away, mercilessly. From the icy depths, there is no reply. The rope hangs limp, a dead weight, showing no signs of life at the other end. This absolute silence is more frightening than the loudest scream. It suggests that the battle may already be lost. Walter and Simon are faced with a monstrous choice. Every fiber of their being screams at them to go down and help their friend. But the physics and geometry of the glacier are working against them. The crevasse Karl fell into isn't a wide cavern, but a narrow, icy throat, tapering like a funnel. All they have is lightweight assault gear for a fast ascent, not heavy winches for rescue work in tight spaces. To descend into that mousetrap without specialized gear would be a death sentence for all three of them. Still, they refuse to give up without a fight. Right there on the steep slope, balancing over the abyss, they dig out a small snow ledge, a precarious platform to work from. Armed with avalanche shovels, the partners frantically try to widen the edges of the chasm, heaving tons of snow aside. They dig until they're exhausted, peering into the darkness of the crevasse, trying to make out any kind of shape 15 meters below. But the more time passes, the clearer the horrifying truth becomes. A fall from that height into a narrow ice chute is like hitting a concrete wall at high speed. Experts would later conclude that his chances of survival were practically zero. And the mountain continues its work. The snowfall that began in the afternoon intensifies through the night. The fresh, soft, silent snow begins to slowly fill the crevasse. It's as if nature itself is trying to cover up the tragedy, pulling a white blanket over the site of the fall. Walter and Simon remain on their tiny ledge, in total darkness and cold, forced to watch as the elements slowly seal their friend's icy tomb. The dawn of July 16th brings no relief. It only serves to brutally illuminate a scene of icy silence. Walter Nones and Simon Kerrer greet the morning on their tiny snow ledge, completely drained after a sleepless night of struggle. They look at the snow-filled crevasse and realize the terrible truth. There's no one left to save. The mountain has claimed their leader for good, sealing the entrance to his ice tomb with tons of fresh snow. Now they face a different task, saving themselves. With hands trembling from the cold, they pull out their satellite phone. It's their only lifeline to the outside world. Dialing the number is an ordeal. They are about to make the hardest phone call of their lives. On the other end of the line, far away in Italy, the expedition manager and Karl's wife pick up. The words get stuck in their throats, but they have to be said. Karl is gone. The phrase travels thousands of kilometers, shattering the hearts of his loved ones. Nones and Kerrer aren't making excuses. They're stating a fact, while standing on the brink of their own demise. In that moment, Nanga Parbat shows its predatory grin. Logic dictates they should retreat, get away from this cursed place. But the route they came up is gone. The slopes below them have turned into active avalanche chutes, and the fragile snow bridges they crossed yesterday are now invisible death traps. To descend the same way would be to willingly step into the abyss. The path to safety is both paradoxical and brutal. To survive, they have to go up. They relay their insane plan to base camp, climb even higher into the death zone, towards the ridge, to find another way down. It sounds like a suicide mission, but there is no other choice. They have to climb nearly another vertical kilometer on unknown terrain, without a leader, with their morale shattered, and with minimal food. And then, fate delivers the final blow. Just as they manage to relay their rough coordinates and say they're moving out of the Serac zone, the satellite phone screen goes dark. The battery indicator, which had been blinking red, finally dies. The connection is severed. The electronic silence is more deafening than the wind. Now, they are utterly alone on one of the most dangerous mountain faces on the planet. No one can give them a weather forecast. No one can offer a word of support. Two tiny human beings are left alone with a giant that has already taken their friend and now watches them with icy indifference. While the two survivors battle the icy silence high on the mountain, a massive rescue operation kicks into gear far below. Italy refuses to abandon its sons. News of the tragedy instantly mobilizes the elite of the mountaineering world. A rapid response team is formed, including the legendary Silvio Mondinelli and Maurizio Gallo. These men know the value of time in the mountains better than anyone. By July 17th, they are already flying to Pakistan, launching a complex diplomatic and logistical operation. The Pakistani army steps in to help. Military pilots, accustomed to flying in the harshest conditions of the Karakoram, get their helicopters airborne. On July 19th, aerial reconnaissance begins. A helicopter scours the massive Nanga Parbat, and soon the pilots spot two tiny dots on a blindingly white plateau near the Silver Saddle. They are alive. They are moving. But spotting them is one thing. Rescuing them is another challenge entirely. The climbers are at an altitude of over 7,000 meters. Here, the laws of aerodynamics work against the machines. The air is so thin that the rotor blades can't get enough purchase to hold the helicopter steady. Hovering to winch the men aboard is impossible. The chopper would immediately drop like a stone. The pilots realize they can't extract them from here right now, but to leave them without aid would be to sign their death warrant. The crew attempts a maneuver worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster, but with real-life stakes. The pilot guns the engine, making a dangerously close pass along the slope, balancing on the very edge of a stall. Icy wind blasts through the open cabin door. The rescuers take aim and drop a precious package on the fly. A container with the bare essentials plummets to the ground. Food, gas canisters to melt snow, and most importantly, a new satellite phone. The package lands in the snow not far from the exhausted climbers. For Walter and Simon, it's manna from heaven. The supplies completely change the odds in this deadly game. They have fuel to make water and get warm, but most importantly, they have communication. They are no longer alone. The voice on the other end brings a surge of hope, and with it, crystal clear instructions. This audacious flyby has given them a chance they didn't have even an hour before. With a new phone and a restored connection, they hear the voice of Silvio Mondinelli. They're getting a step-by-step survival guide from a man who knows every rock and crevice in the Himalayas. Mondinelli lays it out for them. Their escape route is over the Silver Saddle, a high pass on the mountain's ridge. But there's a catch. It's at an altitude of 7,400 meters. For these exhausted men, reeling from the death of their friend, and after several nights on the face of the mountain, climbing that high seems impossible. But it's their only key to survival. The climbers begin their grueling ascent towards the sky. They move slowly, forcing themselves to take each and every step. When they finally reach the ridge and cross over to the other side, the view of the Diamir face opens up before them. This is the classic route, the one used by standard expeditions. Here, among the rocks, they find what seems like the most beautiful sight in the world: old, faded ropes left behind by previous teams. These frayed lines, dangling in the wind, become their lifeline. Walter and Simon clip their carabiners onto someone else's ropes, entrusting their lives to gear whose strength is completely unknown. It's a risk, but a necessary one. They begin their descent along the Kinshofer route, moving from one camp to the next. But the mountain isn't ready to let them go that easily. The weather turns again, forcing them to wait out a storm and lose precious time. Their exhaustion grows with every passing hour. Their bodies' energy reserves are depleted, and the cold seeps into their very bones. What they are doing is what climbers call a traverse, ascending one side of a mountain and descending the other. Usually it's done for sporting glory and records, something prepared for over years. But the case of Nones and Kerrer is unique. This is a forced traverse of an 8,000er, undertaken not for medals, but for basic survival. They are crossing one of the highest peaks in the world, not as conquerors, but as fugitives, escaping an icy trap at the very last moment. The sound of rotor blades slicing through the thin air becomes the most beautiful symphony in the world to them. On the 24th of July, the nightmarish 9-day marathon finally comes to an end. Walter Nones and Simon Kerrer, looking like shadows of their former selves, descend to 5,700 meters. It's still a dangerous altitude for any ordinary person, but for a helicopter, it's a workable flight level. The steel birds of the Pakistani Air Force return. The same machines that had dropped supplies into the abyss days earlier now land to pick up the most precious cargo of all, human lives. When the helicopter skids touch the rocky landing zone, those waiting see the true cost of this rescue. The men who step out of the cabin are not the glossy athletes from magazine covers, but people who have returned from the other side. The medics immediately take over. Simon Kerrer is diagnosed with severe frostbite. The high-altitude cold has left its mark. Walter Nones is exhausted beyond belief. His eyes are sunken, and his body has burned through every last reserve, sustained only by sheer willpower. They survived, but the mountain exacted a terrible price for their escape. Yet, amidst the relief and joy of the rescue, a heavy, oppressive silence hangs in the air. 2 men got out of the helicopter, but 3 went up the mountain. Karl Unterkircher is not coming back. His journey ended up there, high above. He found his eternal rest deep within a glacier, in the very same silent, icy cathedral he was so eager to explore. The Mountain of Fate lives up to its grim nickname, keeping the expedition's leader forever in its icy grip. Back at base camp, the inevitable, agonizing question arises. Can his body be brought home so his family can say goodbye? The answer comes from Silvio Mondinelli, the rescue coordinator and one of the most respected climbers in the world. His verdict is as harsh as the strike of an ice axe against rock, but it holds the grim truth of the high mountains. He confirms that the accident zone is completely inaccessible. Any attempt to organize an expedition to retrieve the body from the chaos of overhanging seracs and bottomless crevasses would pose an incredibly high risk to a new team. Risking the living for the dead at such an altitude is a taboo that no one dares to break. The glacier holds its secrets tightly, moving slowly, centimeter by centimeter, downwards. Karl has become a part of this majestic and merciless nature. For the climbing community, it is a moment of humility before the power of the elements. While the blades of the rescue helicopter cool on a rocky patch in Pakistan, a different kind of storm is brewing in Europe, a media storm. The silence of the high peaks is replaced by the roar of printing presses and television broadcasts. News of the tragedy spreads like wildfire. Major global media outlets, from Rome to London, run with screaming headlines. Journalists are quick to recall Nanga Parbat's dark reputation as one of the deadliest mountains on Earth. The press eagerly seizes the dramatic story, painting a picture of a ruthless peak that has once again confirmed its lethal reputation. In moments like these, survivors often find themselves in the crossfire. A public, sitting comfortably in their armchairs, loves to find someone to blame and ask uncomfortable questions. Why did they leave their friend behind? Could they have done more? Walter Nones and Simon Kerrer, still reeling from shock and physical exhaustion, are at risk of facing a wave of condemnation. But then, a figure whose authority in the world of mountaineering is absolute steps onto the stage. Reinhold Messner, a living legend who lost his own brother on the slopes of this very same mountain many years ago, publicly defends Karl's partners. Messner acts decisively and directly, shutting down any speculation at its source. He declares to the press that the decision to climb up and save themselves was the only correct one in that situation. His words sound like a final judgment from the highest court. Karl is dead, buried in the snow. What could his partners do? It was their right and their absolute duty to save their own lives. He explains to the general public the brutal arithmetic of the death zone, where any attempt to evacuate a body from that icy trap would have guaranteed the deaths of 2 more people. This voice of reason instantly cools the heads of the critics. But the most important words come not from the experts, but from the family. Silke Unterkircher, the wife of the fallen climber, shows incredible strength of character. Instead of looking for someone to blame for her grief, she publicly supports Walter and Simon. In an interview, she states firmly, "I am sure they did everything they could." That sentence puts a definitive end to any ethical debate. She refuses to play the role of accuser, understanding that the mountains don't forgive mistakes, but they also bear no malice. In the end, the official version of events is ruled a tragic accident, caused by the objective dangers of the mountains. No investigations, no accusations of negligence. The expert community agrees. It was a fatal combination of an unstable snow bridge and a sudden turn in the weather. Most mountain tragedies eventually become dry statistics, but the story of Karl Unterkircher refuses to be just an archival entry. 2 years after that fateful snowfall, his name returns to inspire new heroes. In 2010, a landmark event takes place in the climbing world, the establishment of the International Karl Unterkircher Award. This isn't just a trophy for speed or difficulty, it's an award for spirit. The jury looks for those who follow the same philosophy of playing a fair game with the mountain. Symbolically, the first recipient is the famous Swiss machine, Ueli Steck. By accepting this award, the elite of the sport acknowledge that Karl was one of them, a visionary who set the trends. Karl's death and the miraculous rescue of his friends also changed the very approach to organizing expeditions. This drama becomes a harsh but effective lesson for the entire community. The story proves that in the 21st century, heading out on a difficult route without a reliable satellite connection and a GPS tracker is madness. It was that call from the summit and the dropped phone that saved 2 lives. Now, having backup communication systems has become the gold standard for safety. Karl, without ever intending to, may have saved the lives of future climbers with his own death, forcing them to take their technical gear more seriously. But the most important legacy he leaves is intangible. Unterkircher remains in history as a symbol of pure alpinism. He represents an era when a person goes to the summit without an oxygen mask, without an army of support staff, and without the desire to conquer nature at any cost. He sought a dialogue with the mountain, not a war. His style, light, fast, and honest, becomes the benchmark for a new generation. Karl Unterkircher never came home, but he remains a part of these mountains forever, their eternal guardian, who continues to live on as long as he is remembered.